Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to one of our Little In Conversation series. I'm delighted today to be joined by Stephen Knight. Stephen is the founder of Pimento, a networking organization here in the UK, but I'm going to let Stephen explain a little bit more about that. Hello, Stephen. Great to have you with us.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm very, very well. It's a Friday for those of us watching this live. Well, they won't be watching it live, but watching the recording soon by. So it's a good roll up to the weekend. I'm in a good mood. Stephen, you and I have known each other for a few years, but we've started to do a little bit more together, both as Mission Hubs and Pimento. But I'm very keen every time we do these sort of conversation things to learn a little bit about the person behind the business. So your CV is, I was looking at it earlier before. I mean, it's extraordinary. It's a list of fantastic agency names that you've got there, client side as well, with a very well-known entertainment brand. But could you tell us a little bit about your back history, please?
Sure, absolutely. So I spent my formative years in advertising. To our earlier conversation, I have to confess I was an 80s ad man, and very much enjoyed that period of my life. I worked for some outstanding leading creative agencies in London, WCRS in particular, and Lower Howard Spink, which was a wonderful agency at this time. And then decided I needed to kind of round up my career by going to go client side. So I was asked to go and work for the Walt Disney Company, initially as the vice president of brand management in Europe, which was a new role for them. So I moved to Paris because they were headquartered there, not because of the theme park, but just that there was a deal with the French government. They had to have their offices there. And eventually I became the CMO for the Walt Disney Company in Europe, Middle East and Africa, and enjoyed 5 years there. So it's been a mix of client and agency sides. I've done a lot of consulting in that period, both for brands as well as agencies, and opened and driven lots of new businesses myself over that period of time. So it's been nearly 40 years of active marketing, sales and marketing activities, and I've enjoyed every moment.
As I say, I mean, it's there's some great names on the list, and fantastic that you've got both client and agency side. I mean, I suspect that has probably helped you tremendously during your career to be able to sort of see both sides of the equation, as it were.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing has been the fact that the way in which media channels have evolved in that period of time. And in order to be productive, I think at any stage in your career, you need to have a very broad perspective on not just marketing, but the channels and the effectiveness of those channels and how they need to work together. So the beauty of working on the client side is you have to really understand everything and have a really broad knowledge and be a generalist if you're going to be successful as a CMO.
Yeah, indeed, totally agree. And um, you had your career, you did the advertising thing, you did the client thing. Then in 2005, for what, well, you can tell us for what reason, but you decided to set up Pimento. What was the original idea? What was the sort of thing that woke up one morning, and went, ping, I've got this amazing idea. What was the genesis of Pimento?
Genesis was that we were working with literally hundreds of agencies at the Walt Disney Company, every line of business, and there were 14 operating divisions, had multiple agencies, which were then replicated at a country level. And all of them were probably very good, but the reality was we weren't getting any objective advice. And we also weren't getting much collaboration between the agencies because they were all fighting for the same budget. It was particularly with the groups, and we found the groups themselves were basically very internally focused and very uncollaborative. Didn't really want to work with other groups. Didn't even want to work with agencies within their own groups, and therefore it was very difficult for us to get people to actually recognise that the client needed to be at the centre of these relationships, and actually the agencies need to orientate themselves around that centre and work in a collaborative fashion. And there was massive duplication. Costs were out of control. So I sought to try and find ways to reduce our costs and improve our effectiveness by reducing the number of agencies, first of all, putting all our media buy into one agency. I think we were spending about 300 million at the time, and it was sitting in different pockets in different countries. And thereafter, really trying to get the organisation to appreciate and understand the benefits of actually collaborating at a European level. And we were reasonably successful, but ultimately it did shine on a particular problem. It did shine, sorry, I should say again, I'll start again. It did, for me, demonstrate that there was a fundamental issue with the structure of the industry. And that issue was that agencies weren't necessarily doing the right thing by their clients. They weren't necessarily engaging and listening and actually reacting and creating solutions. They were much more focused on selling them products and services, regardless of whether or not they were appropriate. and clients were increasingly confused by the plethora of different media channels, making it very difficult for them to understand what they should be doing. And they themselves were trying to replicate internally the structures of the agencies they are working with. So in the past, it might have been a full service agency. The reality is everything had fragmented, and they had multiple different suppliers all doing certain things and increasingly overlapping each other. So client organizations were just getting heavier. They're having to hire more people to manage all those resources. The effectiveness of the campaigns was diminished. The costs went up, and I just thought, well, there has to be a better way. So the Pimento concept was born out of my experience at Disney, to answer your question directly. And the starting point was to suggest that actually, was there a way in which we could actually create structures that were bespoke and designed around client briefs, that had professionals who had not just obviously the relevant skill sets in the channel, but equally had significant experience in the client domain and understood that particular business and sector experience, if you like. And we were able to recognize that you'd never be able to do that if you own the assets, because if you own the assets, you then become party to making the same judgment, and the agenda becomes your agenda, which is I want to sell you these services. Whereas if you don't own the assets, you can be brutally honest with your clients and orientate ourselves around them, understand what their requirements are, starting with what's the business problem, not what is the marketing challenge, and thereafter craft teams that respected their needs and evolved over time. And that's what we've been doing for 20 years.
I think it's really interesting, actually. There's a couple of things that you mentioned there. One of which is the sort of the idea that the client has to sort of build up the team to match the agency, because agencies tend to think of it a little bit the other way round, where they're sort of building up to match the client when they don't appreciate that's happening on the client side. And this sort of plays into this whole bugbear I personally have, which of course agencies refer to themselves as partners to clients, whereas in actual fact they're service vendors in the most part. And as you say, they're owning assets and stuff that they are trying to sell to that client. It's a very interesting and complex relationship that I don't think agencies fully appreciate, or at least pretend not to fully appreciate from a client's point of view.
Yeah, they probably only see their central contact. So
Yeah.
if they're in the sort of performance space, then they're dealing direct with the head of digital. If they're on the brand side, they're dealing with the head of brand. They don't necessarily see the entire entity, and nor do they probably appreciate also the pressures that are being put upon the marketing teams, because they're always under-resourced. I've never met a marketing team that says we've got loads of time on our hands, we've got lots of resource. It just doesn't exist, particularly at the moment in this economy. Clients are shedding their marketing teams, they're reducing their headcount, and they're looking for ways to reduce their cost base, which again plays back to the independent sector, because indies are doing or should be doing rather better at the moment, because a lot of the groups are losing business to the independent sector who can actually deliver what is required by clients in terms of value and in terms of skills and in terms of commitment.
No, absolutely. And I guess the lead on from that is, really from your point of view, having been in business doing Pimento for 20 years, what have there been any significant moves or changes, or are we sort of more of the same?
Well, when we started, we had about 30 agencies within the network. We're now approaching 190 independent agencies, consultants, and we also have professional services there to help support the growth of the agencies themselves. What has changed is basically we've mirrored the market, and very often we're ahead of the market in terms of the fact that we get demand from clients for services and have to find the right agencies to actually support their requirements. If we look back even 5 years ago, we didn't have any AI specialists within the group. We now have multiple agencies that basically consult and support brands, not just in marketing when it comes to AI, but right across their business needs. If we look back 10 years, we wouldn't have had anyone in the social space, or we wouldn't have had anyone in the influencer space. So the range of different options we now have on the table, I think it's 97 different marketing disciplines, that's dramatically increased. But at the same time as it's increased, it's also reduced in the sense that the overalls all apply. The basic understanding of marketing and how marketing works, that hasn't changed. And the more you layer up technology and the more you add complexity to things, the simpler you need to be, and the more focused you need to be in terms of proposition. And equally too, the more important creativity becomes, because everybody's using the same tools. Everyone's using the same AI tools. Everyone's using the same methodologies and processes. Everyone's spending oodles of money on Meta and elsewhere. And the issue is the same as it was when you were talking about television, which is actually, how do you create standout? How do you create brand response? How can you make your business, more successful and grow it? So those issues that haven't changed.
So you would still say that, creativity is still the big differentiator then?
It is, because we all get excited about the tools, and everyone again rushes into a new marketplace, and then it becomes oversubscribed very quickly, be it social or be it influencer, or even back in the old days, television. And then what people quickly realize is that in a crowded marketplace, you have to create really clear, well designed, beautifully executed communications, whatever form they take. And therefore, to do that, you need professionals. AI won't do that. AI can't do it on its own. You need the right prompts, you need the right creative director, you need to be working with those technologies and working with those assets, but you need judgment, and judgment comes through experience.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I guess probably leading on a little bit from that, but I mean, looking where you sit at the moment, looking forward as much as one can do, we live in a world that is probably changing more so now than ever on a sort of almost hourly basis. And what do you think lies ahead for the creative industry for the next, say, 6 to 8 months to a year, I guess? Is there anything that sort of jumps out at you think that's probably going to happen? We need to be careful of that.
I think the big question at the moment is, what will an agency look like in, say, 2 years' time? We can't even say, we would have in the past said 5 years' time, but as you rightly say, there's no point even trying to guess that.
No.
And to try and work out basically the role of technology versus the role of people, and how do you basically equip and develop talent in order that they can actually create a standout proposition for your agency. How, as an agency, can you articulate a clear proposition that actually lands well with the prospective clients as well as your existing clients? What new skills do you have to learn? What old stuff do you have to junk? There's a lot of agencies that have made big money over the years from production, and the reality is that's going away. So how can you move further up the food chain, and how can you command the respect and recommand the respect of being involved at the top table, and actually not be a supplier, but actually become a partner? And we all talk about it, but I don't know whether agencies are actively doing enough of that. It was the old day of the full service agency. There was respect. The client, the agency had a partnership. They sat around the table together. They talked about business. People were employed on their account to really understand the sector, understand the dynamics, understand the competition. There was forward planning. People would sit down and do 12-month, 18-month plans, etc., etc. I get a sense that doesn't happen as much as it used to. The lead creative agency is no longer just a lead creative agency. They need to be more than that. So challenges, I think, for agencies are clarity over proposition, reinvent yourself constantly, make sure your clients fully understand what you do, and equally to make sure that you understand what your clients want from you and what they expect. And agencies aren't very good at taking advice. They're great. They love dishing it out and they love talking to brands, but very rarely will they actually put some money on the table to get some external people to look at their business and actually give an external articulation of what they're good at. Where are the gaps, etc. And I think it's like therapy. All agencies need external support and counselling. It's really valuable to have organisations look at you from the outside and compare and contrast what you're doing with your counterparts. And even the groups aren't very good at that.
Yeah, no, I'd very much agree with that statement, actually. And of course, I think within the Pimento organization, you do a lot of other stuff which helps agencies and individuals within the broader community, the creative community, the marketing community, to understand, upskill, get to know each other. Can you talk us through a little bit of the sort of ongoing, actually quite large agenda that you have, that enables your members to participate in events and such like? What sort of things you get up to?
Okay, well, at our heart, we're a community, as you say, of independent agencies, and foremost, we're there to help generate and deliver new business growth. But as part of that community, we have a referral scheme which allows members within the network to be able to refer and receive briefs from each other. It also allows them to extend their proposition to their clients and deepen those relationships and get, obviously, commission from doing so. So that's been the kind of commercial focus that we've had right the way from day one. Over and above that, obviously, running an agency can be quite a lonely existence, particularly if you're running a small agency. So through our activities and our networking, we do 50 odd events a year. They get the opportunity to learn from each other. We have all sorts of different activities, from leadership events and dinners right the way through to the Pimento 6 p.m. Club. I had one last night in Bath. The night before, there was a dinner up in Edinburgh. Next week, we had 2 other events. And then we have loads of webinars, all on different topics. Some on business development, where we get experts in to talk about aspects of business development. Others are brand facing. So we're doing a brand facing webinar next week on sustainability, trying to get that back on the agenda, as we see pressure from elsewhere in the world. So it's a mix of different things to different members. Some members come because they genuinely want to be able to actually build a larger network of people they can work with. Others, it's purely about new business. Others, it's about actually learning. But ultimately, we're there to support the independent sector. And the big issue we have is there are so many independent agencies, something like 25,000 independent agencies in the UK alone. And that's growing by the day as the groups imploded themselves. And all of those agencies, need to find a client. And the reality is clients don't know where to go. The reason why they end up working with groups is because of brand awareness, because of the intermediaries who are primarily working for the groups encourage it. We act as a gateway for brands to find them access to the independent sector. And increasingly, by working with people like Mission, we can do that not just in the UK, but around the world. So our mission is about basically shining a light on the independent sector and making sure that great agencies in the independent sector grow and communicate and can work with other agencies, as well as obviously brands. And that's what we do.
Cool. I think it's a tremendous thing that you're doing, and having sort of participated in several of the events now, I mean, there's a lot of value to be had there. And obviously, as you know, Mission sits with Mission Hubs in a slightly strange place between the independent and the sort of holding company space, but nevertheless, a lot of what you're talking about is still equally true for an organisation like ours. Stephen, I'm just conscious of the time, but if anyone wants to learn more about Pimento, what's the best port of call? The website? Give you a call? What should they do?
Just either give me a call, and I can give you my number now if you want, which is 07 818 095 967, or drop me an email at stephen.knight@pimento.co.uk, or get in contact with you, Paul, and I'm sure you can pass them my way. But no, we're always constantly looking for new agencies. We can only offer a bespoke proposition to brands as we've got depth, and it's important that we've got both different geographical points as well as obviously different price points and different scale and different specialisms. So we will continue to grow.
Fantastic, Stephen. As ever, total pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. And as it's Friday, as I said at the top of the call, I wish you a good weekend.
And yourself. Thank you very much indeed, Paul.
Cheers.